extend, but literally keep that storm surge in check. That may be good later on for Tampa, but that's worse for areas farther to the south. I'll show you in a second. So now, let's talk about the size of the wind field. It is right now a relatively compact storm. Hurricane force winds, we think, extend out really only about 30 miles. But the tropical storm force winds go out about 100 miles. That's kind of confirmed by some of the observations and the buoys that we've seen around there. But now we have some good news here. A little bit, I think. Milton is going to be moving over some cooler water with less heat content, less fuel. The atmosphere is increasing its wind shear and the dry air penetration into it. I think both of those will conspire to allow a weakening trend along the way. But, as Alex said, it is likely to come on shore as a Category 4 hurricane. Here are some of the various track models. And they are, right now, a large part of them, many of them, are centered on a landfall south of Tampa. What does that mean in terms of impacts? With wind, the strongest of all the wind is going to be probably along and to the south of that track, wherever it may be. Again, there's still uncertainty in this, but it does appear that perhaps Tampa and south, that's where the strongest winds are going to be by far, with wind gusts over 100 miles per hour, even inland, and even perhaps all the way to the Florida East Coast. Here's my last graphic about the surge. Now, we're going to see more and more refinement to this forecast, even today, as we better understand where the center is going to go. But for right now, Tampa, Clearwater, St. Pete, probably less of a storm surge than areas farther to the south, like Sarasota, Venice, and even farther south from there. Again, here's the potential storm surge from maximum rises above the normally dry ground at the high tide mark, right? But do know that as we get better data and figure out exactly where this is coming on board, we're going to know exactly where the greatest storm surge, and again, along and to the south of where the center crosses the coast. So officials now are warning, and for the final preparations should be rushed to completion, as Milton is expected to make landfall later tonight, maybe even early after midnight. Now let's get back out to meteorologist Mike Bettis, who's live in Tampa. And Mike, the question is, does the city seem prepared for what you've seen for what's to come?
Yeah, and I thought great analysis from you, Doctor, posted on what's going on there with potential, landfall locations. And a lot of times we say, don't sweat the details, right? Watch for a wide range of effects here from the storm. But when you talk about a major metropolitan area like we are here in Tampa, we are sweating the details of where that center goes, because it makes a huge difference whether or not we get, huge surge in Tampa Bay or not. Does the wind and the surge come in, or does it go out because we end up getting more or less an east wind? Those are the key questions, and that's why we are sweating those details a little bit here for this storm. Let me show you some other locations, including there in Fort Myers and Siesta Key. Poor weather there, just like we have now. Rainy, at times a little breezy. In all these locations, the winds in particular really begin to pick up for us as we go through the afternoon and evening, okay? But I want to talk a little bit more about, the debris that we had from Helene. Again, we're just recovering from that. These places took a pretty heavy hit. So there's a lot of debris that's still sitting curbside that hasn't been picked up yet and taken off to the landfill, also depositing at the fairgrounds. And so that becomes maybe floating debris now. If we get storm surge, it becomes projectiles if we get extreme wind. It's a lot of that debris that's just sitting loosely that flies around. But a lot of people have been evacuating as well, and I think that Helene, was that shot across the bow, if you will. And this could potentially be a direct hit, so that's got a lot of people's attention. A lot of people were leaving, especially on Monday around the Tampa area. We had traffic jam yesterday. We had a lot of traffic down I-75, along Alligator Alley, up on I-95 in Jacksonville, as people want to get out of harm's way. There's a lot of population here in vulnerable locations out on the barrier islands, the beaches, from like Longboat Key all the way past Clearwater. These are locations where you've just got heavy population. That's it. But let's talk about some of the scenarios, if we can, but what can happen in Tampa. Of course, we've got storm surge warnings, and the forecast is for 8 to 12 feet of storm surge at the beaches here and up through Tampa Bay, okay? But let's talk about the scenarios, and the angle of approach can mean everything in a circumstance like Milton, all right? So straight on approach that comes right on in, what could that mean for us here? Well, generally that's going to mean, especially if say the eye is just north of it, it's going to maximize the surge. It's going to come on that right front quadrant and push all the water right into Tampa Bay. That's when you maximize the surge and you see the full extent of that forecast realized, okay? Then you take a look at potentially, a hit that comes in maybe just south of Tampa. And as of right now, that'd be where the center track is. Again, that could wobble just a little bit here. That means that we'll get low end of the range here, but extreme surge could impact Sarasota and then southbound from there, okay? Now, if you get one that comes, maybe well south of us, all right? Tampa, you're probably going to get wind that goes out at that point then. You're going to get minimal surge at that point, with the strongest surge then, maybe Sarasota and Fort Myers southbound from there. Those are, again, key factors. We try not to sweat the details, but in this instance, it's really important. And I know that we'll get new track forecasts throughout the afternoon, and we'll try to keep you on top of those as best we can. But glad to see that so many people have heeded the warnings and gotten out and gotten safe. Better safe than sorry. But we can also see some pretty significant effects from Milton up along the east coast of Florida as well. Jen Carfagno is in Jacksonville. Along the east coast, Jen, what should folks be preparing for today?
Yeah, Mike, so I want to talk about what's happening already on the east coast of Florida and then how things are going to change once the hurricane crosses over the state. This is a west coast, east coast hurricane. It is going to be moving fast as well, but because it's moving fast, maintaining its hurricane status as it moves across the state. Now, here in Jacksonville Beach, where I am today, there's, of course, a lot of concern about what kind of wind we're going to get, what kind of surge. We are under storm surge warning. We're also under a tropical storm warning. And just to my south, from Ponte Vedra Beach here southward to the St. Lucie and Indian River County lines, we are also under a hurricane warning in that area. So winds are possible to gust that high, and wind damage is certainly something that is a concern. Trees down, trees on power lines, power out. Just finished cleaning up from Helene in this area, and in the greater Jacksonville area, there was about 140,000 customers without power. There's still some piles of debris around that they were trying to clear. I had the chance to talk to the emergency manager, Andre Ayub, yesterday about getting ready for Milton after Helene.
We just saw with Helene a couple of weeks ago, 2-3 feet. We were able to sustain that. I got into the roadway. You got to take off some roads. In our low line areas that you mentioned, the Riverside area, San Marco, some of our coastal areas. But 2 to 4 to 5 on top of what we're looking at, maybe 6 to 8 inches of rain and some tidal issues. That's serious. So you're going to look at some, like I said, getting into businesses and houses and all that. So it's really a serious time here in Duval County.
And it's a good time to hunker down. Today is going to be a rainy day. The rain is just starting to fall now here in Jacksonville Beach. It'll fall up in Jacksonville, just to my north. Pretty soon, you can see on the radar how very active it is right now with a lot of heavy rain out there. It stretches across the state. Now, this is all in advance of Milton, and we will be getting a rainfall through the day today, increasing at times in intensity of rain and also at times in wind. And I think as we get through tonight and then early tomorrow, that's when we'll see our peak wind concern. The surge concerns will be on the increase as we get through tomorrow as well. We have a 3 to 5 foot storm surge possible along the east coast of Florida, extending up around actually into Georgia as well. And what's interesting is that's going to be along and to the north of the track. I mean, so often we think the right of the track is the side that gets a surge, but because of the direction it's moving and crossing over the state, it's going to be up around to the north. And so certainly just paying attention to the areas around you, staying put during the storm. That is the best advice I can give you, and we'll have continuing coverage on Hurricane Milton right here on the Weather Channel.